Good evening, and thank you for asking me to speak to you this evening on further use of drones in archaeology. So, when you asked me to speak a couple of years ago, YA Mapping were focusing on recording the state of archaeological sites mainly across Yorkshire, and I showed you lots of very nice pictures of various sites. We were working on elevation mapping. We were working on taking some really detailed shots to try and preserve the state of archaeology as it stands. So things have moved on a little bit. So now I'm working with Peter Holken at Hull University, taking an MA by researching crop mark formation in archaeology. So this gives us a great opportunity to have a look at some of the work that we've been doing. It takes us into light reflectance in crop growth, crop marks, and I'd like to show you some of the things that we've been up to. So first of all, thanks to Peter, who's constantly badgering me and encouraging me, and thanks also to Andy Hickey for some of the image processing algorithms that we've been developing, but I'll come on to that as we go through the talk. So going back to where we were a couple of years ago, a very basic level, you see some very detailed diagrams are being developed here. We take a drone, it flies over a landscape, it flies over these beautiful earthworks and these gorgeous ditches. It maps by taking hundreds and hundreds of pictures. So it follows the green lines on here on this particular example at Cawthorne Camps. It takes hundreds of photographs, and by looking at the apparent movement of each point in every photograph, and comparing pairs of photographs, what we can do is we can effectively establish a Z, and the Z is the height, the relative height of each point relative to every other point in the pictures, and so we can produce a 3D image such as this one here. So there's the pretty orthomosaic, as we'd call it, and here is the three-dimensional image that comes back from that. And you can see here that we can see these where paths have been worn through the gateways in the forts at Cawthorne. You can see some fantastic detail. We can zoom right into this. It's a 3 centimeter resolution, and we can see the ditches, the embankments, and I can put a line across those and instantly produce an elevation of the banks, the ditches, and any other features that we may see. We can't see through undergrowth, as you can see. We can't see through trees. It's not LiDAR, but it's very, very precise. It's very, very detailed. It's very, very accurate. So that's relatively simple, and we can make mosaic images like the one that we just saw there, down to, again, 3 centimeter accuracy, extreme detail. So we get a nice recording of the site as it stands, and we get some nice 3D images. So that's great, and not actually that difficult to do. And to be frank, quite a few people are now picking up on this and doing it. So what are we up to these days? Well, before we look at that, let's just look at some of the sites that we've been to in the last couple of years. Up on Adrian's Wall, there's a lot of work going on Adrian's Wall with drones at the moment. This is Broccolita Fort. Here you can see the bathhouse. There's one that looks like one of the cisterns here. Bathhouse over here. There's a gate, another gate there, and obviously one at each side. We can see what looks like a barracks block, commander's house, or headquarters house in the middle here, and various other features that you can't see from the ground. Similarly at Bainbridge, another Roman fort. Got the extension to the fort over here with the with various buildings showing up. A great square building here, or great square enclosed building there. And inside the classic fort, the small fort here, again, lots of buildings showing up using the elevation mapping techniques that we've talked about. And the same again, Hardnut Pass, if you've been there, absolutely stunning location, terrifying drive, and as you can see, the fort shows up beautifully well. We've looked at Roman roads, just using normal photography. So this is the Roman road, Deer Street near Aldborough, just south of Aldborough. You can see the road coming up from Greenhammerton here, a bit of an angle to the road that then carries on to Aldborough here. This particular section of Roman road is visible quite often, most summers really, not very far from where I live, and actually use it as one of my test sites. We have moated manor houses. This is Leconfield. So Leconfield was a brick-built manor house castle inside a moat. You can see the moat, this rather garishly coloured image, and the reason I've given it some false colour is because you can actually see that these red lines here are the walls of the castle stroke manor house, defended manor house, showing up underneath the surface. There's some nice plough marks over here as well. And Eldmire, another very little known about Eldmire. It's up near Topcliffe. You can see the moat here, absolutely beautiful. You can see lots of water management going on, water running way down here, a couple of fish ponds, what looks like a windmill stump there, and various other buildings and enclosures around here, with just up at the top of the picture here, a recorded chapel as well. And finally, Sigson. In this section, we've got Sigson Castle, base of the castle, inside its moat, and you can actually see that medieval plough marks running over that. And this fills up when it gets wet, and normally it's just part of the farmer's land at the back of the farmhouse. We have some hill forts, not exactly in Yorkshire, but the Hereford Beacon, and henges, a bit of a soft spot for the Yorkshire henges. There's Hutton Moor. The owners are fascinated to find out more about their henge, currently covered in cows and all the things that cows leave us. Cinderby is the newly discovered henge, just outside Cinderby near Aidenby Quernhow. We were the first people to photograph, measure and survey it. And Carner Barn, absolutely stunning image. We can clearly see the causeway entrance here. There's the opposing entrance, and you can see the ditches and the banks showing up beautifully on this false colour crop image, and we can come back to that one in a little while. And finally, in the great hinges, is Nunwick Moor. Both Carner and Nunwick completely ploughed out. There is literally nothing to see, as of course is Cinderby, which is why it's been lost for so long. We've surveyed over 600 sites across the north of England. The last count, 27 castles, 14 deserted medieval villages, and quite a lot of unusual things. This one is Maiden Castle up near Richmond, and quite a challenge to get that. That was the third or fourth attempt to get that photographed because of weather, geography, location, and in one memorable case, I seem to remember being attacked by a flock of grouse. So what have we been up to since then? Well, we've done the 600 sites that we've talked about. So now we're moving towards looking at the creation, formation and development of crop marks. And of course, looking at how we can image them and identify them and enhance them. So we all know about crop marks. Crop marks are the key indicator of hidden archaeology in a normal agricultural landscape. But what is a crop mark? First of all, before we address this, let's just have a look at how crop marks in a traditional view are formed. And here you can see in this beautifully drawn image that where we have our topsoil, if you have an ancient filled ditch which is cut into the subsoil, that will fill up over the years with silt up or be ploughed over and fill up with lots of lovely topsoil. Any plant lucky enough to start growing over that will have extra depth for it to establish a strong root system, and that will support a much better growth than in the green part of the plant. Normally, the roots will penetrate into the subsoil to a greater or lesser extent, but a plant growing in normal topsoil, subsoil won't be as good as the one that's got all this lovely ditch to grow into, filled ditch. And conversely, if there's extreme stony, lots of stones, there's a bit of you can see this lovely bit of dry stone wall that's been buried here. Any plants growing over there gets restricted topsoil and will be less strong as a result. Now, what happens when we have plants which are strong, normal, less strong? Well, let's have a look at the way that they respond to light. Now, this is where we're going with our analysis of crop marks. So, this is the normal light spectrum. You see, you start off with UV over here. We end up with infrared over here. In the middle, in actually quite a narrow band, if you drew this out as a logarithmic scale as you'd normally see it, between 400 and 700 nanometers, we start with blue and we go through to red. So this is the visible spectrum. Now that is what we can see, and that's what we make our cameras to see. But beyond the visible spectrum, we are slightly here into the infrared. So what do plants respond to, and what can plants see in this light spectrum? We can see this red, green, blue, RGB. And what can plants see? Well, what they can see is blue, green, red, exactly like us. But they also respond very much to the infrared, which is the this area here, specifically around here. 700 to 800 nanometers is the near infrared, and this is a very important, very small zone of light, because plants absorb the blue for photosynthesis, they absorb red also for photosynthesis, so they like blue and red, and they're absorbed into the plant and used in its biology. Now they do absorb green, but they also reflect some of it. So let's call green a minor reflector. And one of the reasons plants look green is because they reflect green light. So, and we can pick up the green light, but all of the near infrared is reflected. So we get some reflectance in the green, we get lots of reflectance in the near infrared. Now, what does that really mean? Well, not only do they reflect near infrared and green, but the amount they reflect is proportional to the health of the plant. So a healthy plant reflects loads and loads of near infrared, bang, it just chucks it all out. Normal plant, a bit less. And most importantly, a weak plant or an ill plant or a stressed plant or a dying plant reflects very, very little, because the leaves are ill, they're dying, they're not turgid, they're not rigid, and they're not reflecting the light. So if we take a site like this one here, carefully mapped out by me, here we have a couple of ditches, and here we've got this big stony area, probably a rodent villa or something exciting, where the plants grow over, yeah, I'm not quite sure why that bounced in, but where the plants are growing on the normal soil, they grow normally. Where they grow on the topsoil filled ditches, so these are ancient ditches, they grow well, they grow better, just as we saw on the previous slide. And where they grow over the stony area or the compacted area or the walls or the tiled floors or whatever it might be, they grow very weak. So this gives us then the Tony scale of plant reflectance. So let's look at this. And the scale goes from not much to some to quite a lot to loads. Okay, we don't need to get too scientific here. Now, young plants, they don't reflect much light because they like red light. They reflect a bit of green light, quite a lot actually. They absorb the blue, so they don't reflect much of that, because we're looking at plant reflectance here, and they reflect quite a lot, to be frank, of the near infrared. A healthy growing plant, pretty similar, except they're reflecting much more, loads of near infrared. A stressed, ill, or dry plant, pretty much the same profile, but much less on the near infrared. And a ripe plant, as you may know, a ripe plant is effectively dead, a cereal crop, and so it doesn't reflect differentially at all. It just reflects all the light back. So, and there's no absorption. So here we have there's various categories, and what we're basically saying is that the more ill a plant is, the less infrared, near infrared light it reflects. So, and we get this graph here then. Here's the green light. This is healthy vegetation, and you can see that over the green band here, here's our reflectance. This is a graph of reflectance. Blue is absorbed, very little reflectance. Look at the percentage. Even, let's be honest, green isn't a huge amount, but it's more, which is why plants look more green than any other color. Red is the same, you've got some absorbance, but as you move out of the red and you move into this near infrared area here, 700 to 800 nanometers wavelength, look at the reflectance curve. It goes straight up to the roof and it peaks at 800. This is what we call the red edge. This is near infrared light being reflected by plants, and it's exponential. Unhealthy vegetation, as you can see, still reflects, but reflects less. So we can differentiate healthy and unhealthy vegetation by the amount of light it reflects. And that's where we see crop marks, because you either see differential ripening, which means the plants are ripening at different times, or we see crop marks forming because of differential reflectance in the near infrared. So that's all fairly simple, fairly well established. So let's have a look at some propositions. If this is all how plants are growing and how plants are responding to archaeology, and frankly to other growth inhibitors or limiters or enhancements, then is it possible to build and modify a camera, mount it on a drone, and see this near infrared reflectance and spot the differences which the naked eye can't see? Well, yes, here we are. We want a camera that doesn't just see in the 400, 700, but can see beyond that into the near infrared and differentiate the color channels so that we can filter out the parts of the light spectrum that we're interested in. And of course, I'm sure it's no surprise, but the answer is yes. Here is our version 5. This is a Zenmuse X3 camera. Up to now, we've been using DJI Phantom 4 and 4 Pros. These guys are some of the people I work with, and they're getting quite used to helping me and watching me take these things apart and modify them to with these young ladies here as well, and modify them so that they can see light frequencies that cameras can't normally see. So I say this is version 5. Versions 1 and 2 didn't really work. Version 3, I'll show you some images from it, and version 4 unfortunately was badly broken. Okay, so here's a normal picture. This is the Kaywood dig site that we've been looking at with John Kenny and the Kaywood Garth archaeology group. And you can see that under here, around here, that there's some crop marks. So this is a normal image taken. You can see from the crop, you know, it's growing fairly well, and you can see that there's color differences which are caused by local soil changes in this quite large field. Now, if we take this picture with the new cameras, then as you can see, immediately we're getting some good crop marks coming through. Okay, so you can see there's some lines here, some double ditched enclosures there, this rectangle here and this square here. Okay, and when we process it a bit more and do some enhancement, take out some of the common colors, then we're left with this here. Now this is a good site, this is a great picture, one of our test sites, but one of the things that's quite distracting, as you can see, is we can see these land drains running down here. We can also see some more land drains running here. So they're a bit of a problem, and that's because the land drains are also affecting the growth of the plant, of the plants, of the crop, and so we're picking those up because obviously the camera can't differentiate between other factors affecting growth and archaeology. And here's a kind of a sweeping crop mark here, absolutely huge. This is some sort of local soil change, and you can see these blobs, and these are big damp patches in the field. It's a very wet field, hence the reason I think we've got several different types of land drain running across it over the various years. Other sites, this is Peter's site up at Kipling, and you can see that the infrared camera is picking up these shapes, and with a bit of processing, yeah, that's lovely, isn't it? There we go. So the enclosure here, square enclosure that was dug in 2020, and the double ditched fort, shall we call it for the moment. This site is this image is taken from Google Earth, actually. 2018, absolutely beautiful site. As you can see, it's some sort of multi-vallet enclosure. Gateway over here. These circular areas here. Another one there. And if you look carefully, you can see things that could possibly be roundhouses in here. When we photograph that, we get this image here, and this is where we started to run into a bit of a problem, because there is no archaeology. The infrared hasn't picked anything up, and you can see very, very clearly that there's all this lovely crop mark isn't there. So where is the archaeology in this image? And this started me thinking and down a whole new thought process that I want to share with you this evening. So, okay, there's my image, there's the Google Earth image. Why can't we see this? So I did quite a bit of work on this and had quite a bit of thinking about this. And what has been discovered, and I will say now that Andy Hickey, who may or may not be listening to this because he's probably bored of listening to me drone on, has helped me hugely with this. Andy works in medical imaging, and so I've had quite a few conversations with him about extracting information from images where the information isn't entirely clear where it is or where it's hiding. Now, the first thing we did was split this image out into the 4 channels. So these are the color channels we talked about: we got red, green, blue, and the near infrared. So let's do that. So okay, here's the red channel. Now you'll see that actually we are starting to see that in the red channel there is some archaeology. Remember, red is absorption, so red is showing us light which frankly is being absorbed by the plant, and the blue is also absorbed. And there's a little bit, you can perhaps, if with an eye of faith, you might be able to see some archaeology showing up there. But the green channel is a reflectance channel, and there's nothing there at all. And the infrared channel, the NIR channel, unfortunately NIR doesn't show up very well to the human eye, and there you go, it looks like an overexposed photo. So what Andy and I have come up with is a method which we call the HHGVC method, and this is a way of extracting crop marks from images where the crop is not showing stress. And instead what we do is we've written an algorithm that takes the image, splits it out into the 4 channels, and extrapolates variances in the plant reflectance using the near infrared as a baseline. So in other words, we take the near infrared and we look at differences to the near infrared in the stack of the red, green and blue. Okay, come off drones quite a bit here because this could be done with any camera, but obviously combining the controlled flight of the drone with the way of processing gives us a fairly unique proposition. So let's have a look what we can do with the multi-pallet enclosure with this method. There's the image that we start with, and here is what we get when we process it. So here's our archaeology. It wasn't in any of the 4 channels. It's not in the red, the green, or the blue, or the near infrared. But by applying the algorithm to them, we can actually extract some the crop marks that we know were there from the Google Earth images. Now, this is absolutely critical because up until now, we didn't know if there wasn't any archaeology in a field because there's no archaeology, or there's no archaeology in the field because we can't see the archaeology. Very important distinction. Now we can see archaeology whether we can see archaeology or not. So what this shows as well is that because the original image that you're seeing here was taken when the crop wasn't ripening, when the 2018 image, if you remember, was taken when the crop was under extreme stress, and there was lots of news reports, including from us, about archaeology that had been found. What this shows us is that even in 2020, when the crops were growing quite normally, you actually get differential growth all the time. Crops grow differentially all the time in all conditions every year. And that differential growth results in differential reflectance, but we just can't see it. And that differential reflectance, even if you can record it, which you can do with the right camera, even then doesn't show up. The only way to get it to show up is to further process the near infrared and the RGB images together. So this, for the first time then, easily extracts differential reflections from the full RGBN images. What exactly am I talking about here? Because this sounds very, very confusing. Well, let's have a look at a couple of sites. Let's go back to Kwood and show you what we can do with Kwood. So there's the image that we looked at earlier. Nice image. The dig in 2019. Focus on this area and this area. Looking at these roundhouses, you can probably just see some very faint roundhouses there. We were able to drop John and his team directly on the roundhouses, directly on the enclosures here. By using this method, in fact, using this very image, one of a series of images, but this was certainly one of them. Now, if we process this, as you can see, remember we talked about the huge numbers of rather distracting land drains. This looks like a huge square. It's not. What's actually going on here is that all these lines here are actually land drains. And they're distracting us from the archaeology, as you can see. And similarly, with these land drains here, coming across here. So let's apply the GBC method to them, and we get this. Now, this is a completely different kettle of fish. So what have we got here? Let's have a closer look. Here's over here, we've got what looks like some industrial activity. Lots of pits in small enclosures. I'm just going to go through and you can pick out some of the nicer details yourselves. We have hundreds, and I mean literally hundreds of roundhouses all over this image, not just the ones I've indicated. I actually just ran out of patience sticking arrows on for you. You don't want to sit here looking at me pointing arrows all over the place. Look closely and open your eyes. You can see hundreds and hundreds of roundhouses. There's a cluster up here which is almost unbelievable. There's another cluster there, and you can see here that we're bringing them, a couple there. That's a nice one. And these coincide nicely with what's found on the dig. Up here, there's some sort of square feature. I'll zoom in on that in a little bit. And more roundhouses all over the place. That's great news. What's important, though, is if you look at this image, and what's absolutely the most critical thing about it is that the land drains have gone. Now, we've got rid of the land drains by changing the parameters of the processing on the algorithm. So what we've said to it is, don't look at that frequency, only look at this area here on the light spectrum. So what that means is that the algorithm can process an image not just to see the archaeology, but also to filter out crop marks according to their causal factors. Now this is a huge step forward. And what we've found is that if we take here's K-wood, these are land drains and these are ditches. Over the land drains, we have restricted growth, got the little tiny plants here, and they reflect the NIR differently to normal growth. But plants which are growing over the ditches are reflecting the NIR not just more or less, but actually in a different frequency, in a different angle, in a different direction to normal growth and to the growth over the land drains. So if we can isolate this here, if we can isolate this, then we can actually filter out these. I keep pointing at the screen, I'm so sorry. We can strip out the differential reflectance caused by land drains and remove it from the image. And that's precisely what we did. Do you remember this graph? We talked about the blue being the absorption, the green reflectance, which is why plants look green, red is absorbent, and then we have the red edge leading up to here. Now, if you look here, what we can actually demonstrate and what we can filter out is actually peaks and troughs in the infrared reflectance curve. So I can actually say that's archaeology, that isn't, and that's perhaps where the farmer has overfed his plants, and that's caused better growth, and that's caused another differential on the infrared curve. So what we can say is that we can filter out the different causes, however many there are, and extract the archaeology. If you go back to K-wood, there's the little square. This has caused some excitement amongst some Roman specialists, as we appear to have a square inside a square, and we're taking a look at that as we speak with some guys from AOC Archaeology. So let's look at some more sites. This is Carner Barn Henge. Now we looked at this at the very beginning. It was the red and yellow green circular feature, a ploughed out henge over 200 meters in diameter. Here's the henge showing up on the RGB image, the normal image. There it is. You can just about see it there. You might overlook it if you didn't know it was there. And this is actually the famous Carner barn just down here off the image. Give you an idea of scale, that's 200 meters across there. Here's the filtered image from that I showed you, and you can see the henge showing up really nicely. If we now apply the new algorithm to that image, then we get something like this. Now this is a composite image. Each field has been processed by a different method because each field has got a different crop in it, and each of the crops need a slightly different processing in order to bring out the archaeology. So I'll just go through these eight fields. There is actually a ninth field, which is this one down here, which I haven't had time to analyse, unfortunately, although there is a very nice blob in there. So let's just run through these. Here's number one. This is the henge itself, as say, 600 meters across, this lovely causeway feature, showing up beautifully in grass. So this is just grass. Okay, so number two is over here. Now the reason I wanted to get this field in is because on the old maps, just here, there is a burial mound marked, and you can see that we are picking up a faint white circle there. We can zoom in on that a little bit. So that is the remains of a Bronze Age burial mound, but these lines then showed up as well. They're not tractor lines. Tractor lines are very distinct, and they look a bit more like that. And these are showing up on the same filtering as the burial mound with these what look like they could be some sort of enclosure, boundary markers or something. And number 3 is over here. Let's take a closer look at that. Now number 3 is another circle. I have another image which shows the same circle again. It's very exciting. This could potentially be a proto-henge associated with the large henge. Number 4 is just to the north of the henge, and this has not been recorded, but we can see some enclosures popping out here. Possible gap in that one here, possible sub-enclosure coming down here. Number 5 is a strange square feature, which hasn't been recorded before. I'm not sure what that is. Too big to be a square barrow, and to be honest, probably in the wrong area as well. It's up near Ripon. Number 6 are these field boundaries. Number 7 is, very excitingly, is another circle. I can just show you that on the overhead. There it is. And on the same zoomed image, number 8, are these this curving feature here, and these pits up here. So what we've got is each field processed differently, because each field's got a different crop. Each crop is responding to the sunlight differently, because each plant does. And within each crop, we have these areas of differential reflection, which are revealing archaeology to us. And to be honest with you, you can sit here and spot potential archaeology all day long. So that's a brilliant example of the method in practice. If we now go to this is the southern henge at Thornborough. So this is the band of grass that links the henges. Looks like a causeway. The henge itself is just down here where this sweeping line is. If we take a look in between the southern and the central henge, there is a thing called the Centre Hill Barrow, completely ploughed out. There is a bit of a rise, but it's a very wide area, difficult to see, certainly difficult to see any sort of barrow. But here we have the GVC method has picked up the ring ditch. You can see that quite nicely. And as we process the image using different methods, then you can see that we actually end up with, very strangely, slightly different shapes under the soil. So this one here has got a square feature. This one here has got the round ditch and what looks like a kind of eye-shaped a cut into it. And this one here has got this amorphous kind of blob shape here. What's particularly interesting with this, as Peter Halkin himself spotted, is that a little bit of digging, excuse the expression, found that back in 1860, a vicar called Lucas dug this barrow, and Lucas's sketch of the dig shows a very, very clear rectangular excavation. And as Jan Harding himself suggested, that the square that he picked up on the geophysics, here's the geophysics, here's the square showing up there, and there it is there showing up under the drone. The only difference is the drone flight took 7 minutes, and I suspect the geophysics took a bit longer, and certainly Lucas and his young men with their shovels probably took even longer than that. So that's a nice example of the method in use. Further down, and not recorded, you can see this line running across the linking piece of grass between the henges, and that returns here. Now, I don't know what that is. That could be the remains of a cursus. There is at least one other cursus on the site. That's quite an exciting discovery, and will probably need to be reported. And there again is the ring ditch of the Centre Hill Barrow. Very quickly, further, there's the Centre Hill Barrow. Here's the edge of the henge coming round, and Mr. Harding, when he did his excavation back in the 90s, I think it was, discovered a double alignment of pits from this barrow down to this southern area down here, across this, and excavated most of them. And you can see here on the enlargement that we have clearly picked up some of those pits. And you can see here I've overlaid Dr. Harding's excavation report, and you can see that it lines up absolutely beautifully to the dots that the drone recorded. This is just a couple of hundred yards north of those pits. This is the central henge at Thornborough, and this is the image taken by the drone using the new camera. Yep, I know it doesn't look great, but if you take this image, which is an aerial picture from I think the 70s, and this shows one of the only ones I think that shows the infamous Thornborough cursus. You can see it runs under here, it goes under the henge, and everything from this line here has been quarried away. So if we go back to our image, we're talking this area here, and you can see here quite clearly that we have picked up the henge. So we've picked up a ditch, actually 3 ditches, which are quite thin, quite narrow, quite shallow, yet they're showing up, and they're actually showing up in scrub grass and overgrowth. There's no crop here. The henges are surrounded now by just rough ground. So a couple more sites to show you, if I may. This is Weldrake, which was part of the Ouse and Derwent project in 2018. This is where the guys wanted to dig. I recovered these pictures and processed them under the new method. So I got that. Now you can see here that that we've got some absolutely stunning archaeology. Just show you that again. You've got some beautiful archaeology. There's lots of ditches, lots of limers. There's lots of roundhouses, ring ditches, and these roundhouses here shot absolutely beautifully. Especially this one here, which appears to have multi-period, been rebuilt a few times. That's zoomed in for you, and you can see that it looks like you've got an entrance to this enclosure. You've got this big roundhouse, and then you've got this sub-enclosure, which appears to only be accessible from this roundhouse, which is an interesting social thing. Deer Street is a major Roman road, as you know. This follows the B6525 from Greenhampton Borough Bridge. At some point, a couple of hundred yards, it crosses open fields, and this is pretty much the image that I showed you at the beginning. Processed under HHGVC, we can start to see a lot more detail pulled out. I'll draw your attention down here to these enclosures, which now show up much more clearly under the new method. So here they are, and you can see marked off a few interesting features for you. Circular feature there, what could be some roundhouses there, another big circle here, and again possible roundhouses on this rectangular structure just to the north there. Not sure what's going on there. Further down, a little bit further to the west, again you can see, and again you can sit and pull out archaeology all day long, which is simply not visible under the including this rather nice enclosure, simply not visible under the RGB, the normal image. Again, same thing here. You can see there how much more you get from the processing, and again there's the modern drainage there, some sort of trackway running all the way across here, runs for 300 or 400 yards very clearly, something circular there, and again, and then finally, and the thing that really caught our eye was this area here, where we appear to have 2 or 3 rectangular features on this Roman or Romano British landscape. Arras Farm is the famous late Iron Age square barrow cemetery. Here's an image that I took for Peter Hulken, one of the first images that we took together, and that's zoomed in. If we then process it, we get straight away, we can see a huge number of barrows appearing. Interestingly, we can now see that some of the barrows are in little clusters inside these what appear to be ditches, and running all over the site, which seem to be separating the barrows into little clusters. This is glacial cracking, or and you can also see some plough damage if you look where the soil was being dragged in a kind of a zigzag pattern. Same again here, pretty much the same thing. And then in the field opposite, you can see this huge boundary which runs straight across the road and off to the northeast there. Some more barrows if you haven't got enough barrows. This area here is just very close to Arras, and nothing on here looks particularly exciting until you process it and you get this huge round barrow appearing out of nowhere. Another one there, absolutely beautiful. There is another one here. There's a small one just under the mouse there. You can see all this glacial cracking coming out. You can see this feature here, no idea what that is, and this square here, and also this great big long boundary here with what looks like a ladder settlement coming off it, and it going into this field here, crossing this field boundary. Interestingly, actually following the field boundary, the modern field boundary there. Ardgeffryn, one of the last sites I wanted to show you this evening, is the Yavering is the great palace site up near Wooler in Northumberland. This is the excavation sketch, and you can see that what was identified as this stadium grandstand feature is showing up there. There's a little zoom in for you. This is the main palace complex showing up here, showing up extremely well actually. This is the enclosure. You see this, they call this the great enclosure. It kind of wraps around here. Oh, there it is there, coming around here, wrapping back around there. And this circular feature shows up particularly well as well. Yeah, just there. So just south of that, here's Ardgeffryn, here's the great enclosure, this is the car park. Just south of that, and this 1950s, 60s picture, you can see that there's actually a small henge, this circular feature here. That's never shown up on any other aerial pictures. However, if we take our near infrared and do our thing on it, then we can see it's there, showing up quite clearly in this very short crop field actually, and that may show up much better when we get back up there, hopefully this summer. And one thing that hasn't shown up on previous pictures is a much larger circular feature just there, which is a bit of a beauty, to be honest with you. That wasn't picked up in the 70s picture or the much earlier picture there, but here it is. And that's a close-up of the one that on the one that we knew was there, but it's difficult to see. This is Thwing. Thwing is one of my favourite sites, very evocative for me. This is this site was geophysics by Arnold Aspinall, who was my professor and personal tutor at Bradford University back in the 80s. Many of you may have known Arnold. Sadly, no longer with us. I think Arnold would have loved to see some of the things that we're getting out here. So certainly would have saved him trudging across a lot of fields. Here's the great circle at Thwing. You can actually see the two circles of post holes around there. You've got these add-ons to this, and there's the enclosure, roundhouse, and again all these other features here. This is Arnold's geophysics laid over it. That's geophysics on its own. And you can see we've got, yeah, I think we'll take that. I think we'll take that. And the geophysics has picked up things that we haven't. Equally, we've picked up things that the geophysics didn't. And there's a couple of zoom ins just so you can see what an absolutely fabulous site it is. One last site, and it is the last site, isn't archaeology. Now, the reason I want to show you this is to show you the power of the new camera combined with the differential reflectance. And here it is. This is a school playing field. Yep, I personally didn't have a lot of time for school playing fields when I was at school. Now, we caught this on the edge of a survey. Up here in the northeast of this is a site that was being surveyed, and we just caught the school. You can see there's some kids down there, just tiny little dots. So no particular issues with catching them on the picture. However, when I was processing the picture, I got this, and I thought, wow, that's absolutely great, because you can actually see here the tracks that the grass cutter has taken when he's been cutting the grass, or she has been cutting the grass. And then I realized that actually there's some features under here. There's some features there. There's some on this area in the middle, and there's these features here. So, oh, that's really cool. That's pretty good. And then I changed the settings very, very slightly. So we've got some possible buildings, I don't know what they are, rectangular features here, and we can see the tracks of the grass cutter. If we then change the settings on the processing algorithm, just a tiny bit, then we get this. And this absolutely blew me away. And why? Because here's the modern football pitch, and here, look, underneath it is an older one. They've moved their football pitch. There's the centre circle. Let's just go back. There you go. See that very, very clearly. How good is that? So we can see that they've changed the orientation. Now it's landscape, and before, as we look at it, it was portrait. There's the circle. You can see they've even shrunk it a bit. There's the circle. Here's the goal area coming down here, look. Not only that, but underneath it, there's an even older one. There it is. Over here, this pitch, they've kept it pretty much as it has been, but you can see that it's moved a bit. It's crept over the years, because there's today's circle. I don't know who drew that circle, but they perhaps need a new piece of string. And here's the old circle running across here with the centre line. Absolutely fantastic. If we then change the settings a third time, then we can still now see the modern. There's the old ones, there's the new ones again. We see the new ones again, but we also now get this old path running across here to this area, which is just kind of like a long grassy scrubby area. So perhaps something was on this, and you can see that there's lots of little features and blobs and things in there. So quite possible that there was something stood on this bit of grass, and this is an old path that ran across the field and has been picked up by the drone on this third iteration of the pictures. And then finally, a fourth iteration is another pitch layout underneath this one. Again, you've got your grass tracks, but you've also now got this area which has appeared, and these curving features, which no idea what they are. And again, you can see there's some shadows in here. So that's a great example of 4 different types of feature appearing under one small patch of grass. And I think that's a great example of what the drone can see with its new camera, with its new processing. And it's very, very excited for what we're going to be able to find this summer when we have a crop that we can go and play with, and we can start testing this equipment out on some well-known sites. And I'll be looking forward to come back, talk to you then, and show you what we've found. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again, perhaps in a year or two. Thank you.